So, hello. Today I'm going to take a look at the now reincarnated Middle-earth strategy battle game Battle Company's book. So, this is a Games Workshop publication. As you know, probably around 2000 thereabouts when the films came out, Games Workshop started to produce the Lord of the Rings strategy battle game, which is in old Games Workshop tradition, it's a miniature game where you have a rule book, where you have miniatures, you have different types of heroes, of course, all based in the Lord of the Rings. They released terrain, they released different source books, and it was all in connection with the New Line Cinema Peter Jackson trilogy. And when you bought the books, you would also get actual screenshots in the books of the film. Later on, when The Hobbit was released, they released the Hobbit motion picture trilogy strategy battle game, which was again a lot more like the books than a lot more like the trilogy of films than the book. They also released terrain. They also released miniatures, which were quite a lot like members of the cast. So, for example, there is a Thranduil. And I would like to call him the original Thranduil that came with The Lord of the Rings. And then there is one that looks like the actor who plays Thranduil in The Hobbit. And the same also goes for Radagast the Brown. In the original Lord of the Rings strategy battle game, they have a Radagast miniature, which is a lovely miniature. Then, of course, Peter Jackson came along and decided to turn Radagast into an idiot. And they redid the model to now resemble the idiot version of Radagast the Brown. And now, I think this is its third iteration. Now they've rebranded it as Middle-earth Strategy Battle Game. And apparently there's now going to be a new beginner's box or a new starter box set coming out. If you want to know more, you can go to Spielvereinigung, the Fellowship, on YouTube, where they have, first of all, loads of playthroughs. It's an excellent channel, but they also talk about the latest rumors about a big box set coming out, which probably is going to pit Gondor against Mordor. Now, in the past, there would have been miniatures for heroes, there would have been box sets that corresponded to certain events in the film. And I want to say film because they're not necessarily in the movies, but then they also had stories told around the appendices, nothing to do with the movies at all, the fall of Fornost, so there is a lot of stuff in there. And the way this usually works is you have a scenario where you either have a named hero or named heroes like Galadriel, Gandalf, Aragorn, Arathorn, Elendil, Sauron, whoever, and then 1 or 2 or 5 or 6 or 7 or maybe even 800 points of armies. And sometimes there are unnamed scenarios. So, for example, in The Hunt Begins, which is a scenario that I've played on my channel, you have unnamed Dunedain trying to prevent unnamed ring raids from entering the Shire. And this Battle Company's book is a little bit of a departure from this original way of making scenarios happen, of telling the story of the Lord of the Rings. And it kind of reminds me a little bit of what Gary Gygax did when he invented D&D. For those of you who don't know, Gary Gygax, who invented D&D, was an avid miniature wargamer, but it was historical wargaming that he did. So basically, just like in the Middle-earth strategy battle game or in Necromunda or whichever miniature game you would like to have, you have little miniatures, you have rules, and then you basically have either skirmishes where, let's say, 10, 12 models on each side try to win the scenario, or you can have huge armies basically battling it out. But that was historical wargaming. And at some point he thought to himself, okay, the heroes that lead those armies, the generals, what do they do in between battles? And he said, okay, well, they're heroes. So what they will do is they will do something heroic. And that's how he kind of came up with D&D, because he said, you know, between battles, these heroes will find other heroes, form little bands of 5-6 people, let's say a party, you know, a role-playing party, and then they would go into the countryside, look for caves, go into those dungeons, fight the dragons, come home with the treasure. And that's how Dungeons and Dragons was born, because in its very first iteration, it was actually heavily reliant on miniature-based skirmishes that happened in between the role-playing. So there was a lot less role-playing and a lot more hexes and maps, and you would say, okay, there's a dragon, I'm going to stand here, the magic user's going to stand in the back, and let's hope that we don't die. And then, of course, that moved away from this more tactical gameplay to a more role-playing based gameplay, and then they reverted back to tactical with 4th edition, which is an edition that I love. Unfortunately, nobody else does of the people that I play with, because I thought this would have been the perfect game for me. And now they're again, it's now 5th edition, and that is again completely non-tactical. It's still a good game, but I prefer tactical games, of course. You know, being a war gamer, that is quite nice. So with Middle-earth strategy battle game Battle Companies, Games Workshop have gone in the opposite direction. Instead of having the heroes form little parties to go off adventuring, they now take members of an army, and it's a small group, usually 6 to 8 models, which you then have to name. You have to select leaders, and then you pit those small groups against each other, and you can have hero advancement, you have hero progression, they get experience, they can gain injuries, which they then will have to either heal or which might hamper them later on. They can also die. You can use the experience to advance your character. You have a progression chart, for example, here. You can roll a d6, and on a 4 to 5 you get promoted. On a 6 you have a hero in the making. The warrior's valorous deeds have resulted in the warrior becoming a hero in their own right. Warrior injury charts, dead, injured, or fully recovered. Leadership progression chart, army specific upgrade, courage, inspiring presence, rally to me, special rule, might, will. So these are all things that basically lead you down the road of what I would consider tactical war gaming or tactical battle gaming with an RPG twist to it. Because what you're getting is you're getting your models, you name them, that's very important. There's even a section on what common names would work. And you can then take them through their adventures. And the idea is that you find somebody else who also has a war band and you pit them against each other. You have here the armory with war gear that you can add. You can use influence points, which you can win. And the idea is actually that none of the heroes come along. You will never see Denethor, you will never see Thranduil or Galadriel make an appearance. But I will read you from the influence section. Influence represents the allies of a battle company, providing them with aid, whether it is Lord Denethor sending reinforcements to a Gondorian company embroiled in battle, or the Elven King providing extra provisions to a band of elves as they roam the pathways of Mirkwood. It is influence that we use to represent this. The more victories the company earns, the more resources that their allies will send to them in the form of influence. A battle company will always gain 2 influence points for participating in a scenario. Additionally, it receives the following: 1 influence point for a draw, 2 influence points for a win. You may spend influence to roll on the reinforcement chart for your battle company. This will bring in new members to your company, depending upon which faction you have chosen. Each battle company's reinforcement chart is found on their own page. You can also spend it to buy war gear and equipment. Or you can also roll on the reinforcement chart and then influence that roll. So basically, if you have 2 influence points, you roll once, and then you have 1 more point that you can use to upgrade the roll if you don't like the result. So, just big cat. Yeah. You have even things like additional people that you can hire. Local scouts, for example, are 4 influence points. Battle companies will often hire the services of the locals of an area for their knowledge of the lay of the land, and this can be very valuable. So you can have this, you can get a hunting dog, you can get all kinds of things. Whoops. Ja, komm mal daher. Yeah. So the idea is that you can basically build a little army, a very small one, with individualized members that you basically guide through their lives as a war band, against the backdrop of the larger picture unfolding as the War of the Ring. And they allow you different types of battle companies. So you have Minas Tirith, for example, you have the fiefdoms, you have a Rohan group, Arnor, Lake Town, and for example, let's take Arnor as an example. Your starting battle company has 6 models, 4 warriors of Arnor and 2 rangers of Arnor. If you get a reinforcement, you can roll on the reinforcement chart. And on a roll of 2, you get a Hobbit Archer. On a roll of 3, you get a Ranger of Arnor. On a roll of 4, you get a Ranger of Arnor with a spear. And on a 5 or 6, you get another Warrior of Arnor. They also have a specific hero upgrade, Defend the North. It is the hero's sworn duty to protect the realm of Arnor no matter the cost. The hero will automatically pass the first courage test it must make for its force being broken. The Lake Towners have their own abilities. We have Rivendell, where you have 2 high elf warriors with elven blade, 2 high elf warriors with spear and shield, and 1 high elf warrior with elf bow. So this is basically your starting party. You have 5 models. And then on your reinforcements, you can get either some of these or even a Rivendell Knight. So depending on how well you do, you can actually even end up with mounted models. And as we all know, mounted models are extremely powerful. But you could also say, well, you know, I don't want to be a goody two-shoes. What if I have been collecting the evil side? Well, we have Mordor, as well as Harad and Isengard, Moria, Faharad, the Easterlings, Warg Riders as well, Goblin Town, Dol Guldur. So it's all possible. You can have all of these ones. So, for example, the Warg Riders start with 3 wild wargs, 1 Warg Rider with shield, and 1 Warg Rider with orc bow. So that's your starting company. And as an upgrade, you can get Wild Wargs, or Warg Rider with Orc Bows, Warg Rider with Throwing Spears, or Warg Rider with Shields. Over here we've got Dol Guldur, and this is actually one that I can put together myself because I've got enough models. I've got 12 Hunter Orcs, and I've got, I don't know how many Wargs, I think I've got 12 Wargs. And as an advancement, you can either get a Fell Warg or a Hunter Orc with choice of a weapon, Gundabad Orc with shield, Gundabad Orc with spear. Interestingly enough, they don't allow for, and as an advancement, you can get a Hunter Orc on a Warg. So you can basically then, and you've got Angmar here, the Corsairs of Umbar, which are actually really beautiful models as well. I don't have any of those. And then it takes you through battle company scenarios. The way this works is you find somebody else who's going to play against you. Then you roll and you decide based on the roll what kind of a battle scenario you're going to play. So you have on a roll of 1, 2, 3, you then roll a d6. And you get either rescue, chance, encounter, hold the line, infiltrate and assassinate, seize ground, kill the messenger. Or you roll on a 4 to 6, Then you roll on a 1, a show of strength, recovery, stand your ground, secure the area, tame the beast, plunder the camp. So all in all, you have 12 different types of scenarios that you can play. They are fully described with starting positions, layout, objectives, victory, defeat, draw, special rules. And then, and of course they might bring in other models that are not part of your battle company. So for example, in the scenario Tame the Beast, you have a troll. So just having your battle company may not be enough. You probably need something else as well, sometimes. And then they have Adventures in Middle-earth, which is, in my opinion, totally awesome. They have built a little campaign. And the idea is that you get 6 different... Oh, sorry, that happens later. Sorry, Adventures in Middle-earth. This is for you to build your own adventures, and they give you information on how to build your own scenarios and what to take into account. So, for example, if you want to set something in Lake Town, which I would never want to do because Lake Town requires a lot of scenery, which I don't have and which I will never buy because it's extremely expensive and I won't make it myself either. But it basically explains to you what you need to do in order to play in Lake Town. There are ice flows, there are boats, there are doorways, how do they work? The next one is my most favorite one because it deals with forests, and being German, I love forests. So I guess the Germans are the original Ents of this world. And it basically says, okay, if you are in a forest, if you set it in a forest, roll a d6. On a 1, it's a normal forest, no additional rules. On a 2, it's a haunted forest. And it tells you how to deal with this. So at the start of each move phase, randomly select D3 pieces of woodland terrain. The closest model to each of the selected pieces must pass a courage test or suffer the effects of the transfix magical power. So basically, what this does is transfixes it means you can't move. Because you're haunted, there is something weird going on there. Spider-infested forest. At the end of each move phase, randomly select 1 piece of woodland terrain and place a single Mirkwood spider in the center or as close as possible. This Mirkwood spider will then move as fast as possible towards the nearest model from either battle company, charging if it can. This is a really interesting way of making the story more fun, so you have somebody you play battle companies against, and you say, okay, let's have a forest scenario. Okay, so what kind of a forest are we going to have, and how does this actually influence the way we play? The guarded forest, wrathful forest, haven forest. In a haven forest, any evil model that is even partially within a haven forest suffers a penalty of -1 to their courage value. Goblin town, chasms, rickety walkways, fallen dwarf holes, the sound of chasms. Like in Goblin town, the halls of the dwarves are built over a seemingly bottomless pit. Those who lose their footing and fall into the black pit are surely lost forever. Any model that strays into the dark chasms, either by being pushed, failing a leap test, or for any other reason, is slain. So considering that, these are the people you've been building up over various scenarios, this is actually quite traumatic because you're not just losing red shirt number 5, but you're losing ensign row. So that can be quite terrible. Sound of battle. As the 2 battle companies engage, the sound of their conflict echoes within the halls and tunnels of the mountain's kingdom, drawing to it all manner of evil from the mountain's depths. So suddenly goblins of Moria come up. Haunted ruins, chilling aura, spirits of those long dead. It's a really, really well thought out book you can use to make your own scenarios, but not just by saying, because you could do this in the other books as well. It actually fills them with story. It fills them with meat. So this is really almost on the road to role-playing. And then they give you a campaign. The Quest to Fornost. Following the completion of their last mission, your battle company has stopped in the settlement of Esgaroth to rest, gather provisions, and most importantly, enjoy a few well-earned drinks. Listening intently, the company hears the tales of the armory of the forgotten kings of Aranor, hidden within the walls of the ruined Fornost, which is also called Norbury, and their riches and finery that lie within. However, there is also talk of a nameless terror that has laid claim to the vast treasures of the lost kingdom and guards them against would-be intruders. The thought of seizing the relics of Arnor for their lord and the glory that would go alongside them are too much for the company to ignore. They decide within the confines of a dank and dingy tavern to embark upon a quest to Fornost and claim their heirlooms, the heirlooms and riches from the grasp of whatever dwells within. Though any fears of what may be there are soon quashed by the thought of the glory to be bestowed upon them for obtaining the riches of Arnor. With their minds made up, the company obtains yet another round of ale from the bartender and gets to work with setting their plans for the journey ahead. So what now happens is the idea that you, and I'm sorry, my cat is really in the way today, you then have 5 relevant scenarios that are in the book. The first one is called Lake Town Rescue, which I will not play because I don't have Lake Town, but I will replace it with something else. I will play being held captives by either elves or Gondor, depending on what I'm playing. 1 to 3 games of battle companies, so we'll have to put together 2 battle companies, 1 evil, 1 good, and I'll play the good side. Then you go to Beneath the Boughs of Mirkwood, which is also in the book. You play 1 to 3 games of battle companies, then the Breakthrough, then again 1 to 3 games of battle companies, Ambush at night, 1 to 3 games of battle companies, and the Armory of Forgotten Arnor. And this is essentially all in this book. So if you were to play the campaign, you would have 5 scenarios that are pre-made plus up to 12 that you play simply with your battle company, where you can basically make your heroes. Now, this book is very short. As you can see, it's not very thick. It costs 30 euros, which is quite expensive. However, it is totally worth it. So with this book, Games Workshop have moved the Middle-earth strategy battle game away from Lord of the Rings based scenarios that really require you, or which are helped by your love of the books, to something that is a little more generic. I believe that the reason why they did this was because they wanted to attract more people to it. It's now a lot more skirmishy than the big scenarios that you get with the books. You can also play this without having to completely understand the lore behind it, because it doesn't really matter. And I think the fact that you start out with 6 to 10 to 12 models, and if you don't play the scenarios that require anything else, you know, or even like a Mirkwood spider. The Mirkwood spiders are actually quite expensive. I think 2 Mirkwood spiders retail at something like 30 euros. I would never buy those because you get basically 2 spiders for 30 euros. That's nothing. So I actually have my own spiders from Descent 2nd edition, which I will supplement for whenever I need spiders. But you could get cheap spiders off of Reaver Miniatures, just put them on big bases and you're done. So I think that playing this game allows people to get a Middle-earth themed story going without having to invest so much money. Because a battle company today retails at 20 euros. And that's, you get 20, well, I think between 12 and 20 models, depending on what kind of a battle company you're trying to get together. Because obviously the Moria orcs are very, very, the Moria goblins require a lot of models because they are so weak. So I would really recommend this book. If you are into skirmish games and you never really embarked on the Middle-earth Lord of the Rings Hobbit strategy battle game because it wasn't skirmishy enough and it required too many models, and you also maybe didn't like the although I think that there is progression. In fairness, you can move between the scenarios in the source books, but of course if you play a scenario in the Fellowship of the Ring and Frodo dies, you know, you actually can't move on because Frodo has to be there to cast the ring into the fire. So that's a bit of a problem. You'd have to replay the scenario until such time as he survives if you want to stay true to the spirit of the story. But here you can actually have your own heroes, name them yourself, guide them through their lives, and build your own story rather than having the story or playing out the story as told by Tolkien or as told by Peter Jackson in the case of The Hobbit, which may appeal to a different audience. And I wish Games Workshop much success with this, because I think this is a very, very good step in the right direction of getting people into the hobby who don't have as much money. Because if you were to buy all of the stuff you need for the old scenarios, you're going to spend hundreds and hundreds of euros, and it's going to be very, very expensive. And I know because I have been doing this. So that's Middle-earth Strategy Battle Game, the Battle Company's book, published by Games Workshop, and I believe it came out last year, 2017. Doesn't say, or if it's, yeah, 2017. And I can really recommend it. At the moment it retails at 30 euros. It's 4-color, and it is a very good resource if you are into playing skirmish games. Bye!